Well, I'm glad that you asked about family because I don't think you can understand anyone if you don't understand their family, and not just one generation, but going back.
Right.
And so my mother came to America as an immigrant at 19 in the Depression. That was a pretty courageous thing to do. And my dad decided he was going to be an explorer and did at 19. So they had different backgrounds, but they both had given themselves permission to do something pretty unreasonable at 19, and they made it work. They found themselves in New York, and so the families have some common values. The Australian family, creativity, service, community, and the American many roots family, excellence, and do whatever you want, just be the best in the world at it. Never said out loud, but, and then growing up in Manhattan was an incredible gift. New Yorkers walk 15% faster than other Americans. I'm always having to slow down when I'm with other people. And that's just one indicia of the place that has welcomed immigrants for 400 years. They come and they succeed, and it creates a very distinct culture. And my parents were older parents when I arrived, perhaps as something of a surprise. And so they were pretty calm, and given their own backgrounds, they were willing to accept a son who pressed the frontier a bit. Now, in New York, this is before the terrible taking away of freedom of young people took place. You know, once you were allowed to cross the street, you had a free bus and subway pass, you could go anywhere.
Oh.
And any interest, you'll find the best in the world either already there or they come and visit. And my worst elementary school nightmare was that someone in the family would ever get the idea of going to a suburb where one would lose this freedom. So I started things. I'm not built, if you saw me up close, for contact sports.
Yes.
And I could not begin to fathom why I was being tortured by math and Latin and French and other incredible subjects. But I love history and geography. I still have almost photographic pictures of a textbook with a column about left-hand column about Kashmir, for example. And so I started a newspaper. It became one that had circulation across schools, ads, etc., and developed a really strong interest in South Asia. Three great civilizations in the world: East Asia, South Asia, West Asia, Europe, and continuous over 10,000 years, and connected for technology and ideas, but independent. And, you know, so I grew up in the Western one, and, you know, China was inhospitable, to say the least.
in those days.
and by language and politics. And so South Asia was important from very early. And the civil rights movement was coming, and anyone who was alive and aware, that was just really important. And it was a Gandhian movement. And I knew that.
Okay.
Well, that strengthened.
How old would you have been at that time?
Elementary school.
Okay.
And my first big conflict, this was, I think, my sophomore year in high school. I organized a bunch of friends to go and picket the local Woolworth store. And because they had segregated lunch counters in the South. And this got me in some difficulty with the school, who got me on, quote, conduct unbecoming a gentleman, because I hadn't broken any rules. And that was a very instructive conflict. And, you know, I was very lucky that I met in that context Bayard Rustin. And he was just very kind. You know, I was a skinny little high school student and with an interest in India and civil rights, and we shared both of those things.
Wow.
And so I finally got to India, which I'd been dreaming about from early elementary school. In high school, I created the Asia Society and made it the biggest student organization in high school. So it's a really strong interest. Finally, but you know, it was so expensive to fly to India, that was not possible. So I got 3 high school friends, and we picked up a Volkswagen microbus in Munich and drove to India.
Really?
And then had us while we were there. And that was such an experience. As you know, India is a very warm, welcoming place, and people like to talk. And you ask directions, and you have a 30% chance that people will say, "Oh, let me take you there." Like, this is a very, very special place. And then it's like New York, incredible diversity. They're the 2 most diverse places on the planet. I felt very at home. And, you know, we looked at Panchayati Raj and how that was developing. And this was in the states reorganization period along the lines of linguistic states. And so they're looking at those cross stereotypes. So what do people who speak Marathi think about the Bengalis, and etc. So those were 2 broad excuses that allowed us to ask infinite questions of anybody. And, you know, Bayard had really, he opened the door to several just fascinating conversations with Jayaprakash Narayan in Varanasi. And then one of my friends and I made our way to find Vinoba Bhave, who was then in Balasore district in Odisha. And so we, and, you know, again, Vinoba was so patient with us in retrospect. I had infinite numbers of questions, and he never faltered. It was just it was a very powerful set of experiences. So, if you're in India and you see the extraordinary difference in average per capita income at that point,
It really
and you're an entrepreneur, you ask yourself, you don't ask, you tell yourself you've got to do something about this.
absolutely.
And that's where the Ashoka idea came from, because,
Oh,
people of our age control nothing and don't have any wealth. And so we needed to find something that was very leveraged. Well, what's the most powerful force in the world? It's a big idea, but only if it's in the hands of a great entrepreneur.
true.
That is what drives history.